a man, who they say he murdered 3. Strange things have happened there. No stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Chris James. Either my body is crooked or this t-shirt is crooked. The center of my chest is right there. I don't know if this happened because I washed it, put it in the dryer. Maybe they printed it wrong, but oh well, that's life. Reminds me of back when we used to get our uniforms in the Border Patrol made in Mexico. On the collar, it said Hecho en Mexico. And the folks down there weren't exactly too concerned with quality control. We would get uniforms where the zipper wasn't sewn in, one pant leg was longer than the other. I had a sleeve one day fell off of my shirt. It fell off. The threading just came apart. Yeah, nothing says good quality like the government buying their uniforms from a country that's not really happy with us. Oh, well. I found out I drink more coffee than I eat food. I guess I'm a coffee-based life form. The Organic Man Coffee Trike is home to the best coffee in the universe. 4501 McPherson right here in Laredo, or organicmancoffeetrike.shop for everybody else. I usually start thinking about the next show while I'm finishing up the one that I'm working on. As you know, I don't edit the show. It's too much time, and a lot of my fellow podcasters don't know when to quit. I see some of these guys, they do like a 20-minute show that took them 4 hours to edit. Ugh, get a life. Or maybe that is their life. They slice and they dice and they move things around, which for a show that is more of a hobby, that sounds like you're going to work. On a few occasions, I sit in front of my computer wondering what I'm going to talk about. Sometimes this'll take all day. Other times I will get suggestions from listeners and they'll send in ideas either in the comments section or by email, and I try to jump on them right away. I've had several suggestions given to me in the same week, which leads to confusion on my part. I write everything down and then I lose things. I keep a clipboard right here next to my computer where I write things, and then I lose the page, or maybe one of the cats eats it or something. My desk is a horrible mess. But no, I do not like cleaning up the place because the cats are just going to mess it up again. The other day, David Subeth asked if I ever looked into haunted shopping malls. He sent me a link about a weird occurrence at a mall that I simply had to check out. Now, not all of these are hauntings. Some of these are something else. You decide. May 25th, 2016, at the Fayette Mall in Lexington, Kentucky, a very weird incident took place. It was around sundown and the mall was half empty. There was a jewelry store next to the food court that was the main focus of the weirdness. Witnesses were sitting at the tables consuming whatever food they had found at the fast food places. Nothing seemed off until it suddenly looked as if several of the people there became quite nervous. They started looking around as if they were expecting something bad to happen. Nothing they could quite put their finger on, but it was something. The air felt a bit charged, like an electric storm was coming. The lights dimmed just a bit. Most of the shoppers decided to see what might be on sale somewhere else. The crowd became just a few dozen people intent on enjoying their meals and not being put out by any weird feelings. There was a slight rumbling sound that most thought was thunder. This was accompanied by a slight vibration through the floor. Everyone's attention was suddenly drawn to the jewelry store. It looked as if a black curtain had been pulled over the front of the shop. It was described as being blacker than black. Just to add to this weirdness, this was when the lights went out. The entire mall was now plunged into darkness. The few shoppers still there used their cell phones to light up their surroundings. A woman who had been walking past the storefront was suddenly joined by a tall, shadowy figure or shape that was twice her height, almost human looking. The shadow formed and grabbed her in less time than it took to tell. She simply was no longer there. The shadow began to move towards the people in the food court. A few witnesses say they thought they heard screams coming from the blacked out storefront. Others said it was totally quiet. One witness says as the shadow moved away from the wall, others, similar to it, began to form. The blackened storefront was now filled with others just as nasty looking. This was the time for everybody to run. Their flight was paused by a louder rumbling sound from just overhead. The building shook and the blackness in front of the store was whisked away, followed by a collapsed wall. Where the jewelry store used to be was now just a blown out ruin. People began making for the exits. Outside, the police had arrived. Every police unit in town showed up. All the exits or entrances, depending on which way you're going, were secured. As shoppers exited the building, they were stopped by the authorities and questioned extensively about what they may have seen. Anyone who said they saw the blackened storefront or the shadow beings was questioned more intensely. Cell phones were examined and any videos or stills were erased. Folks were told to not go spreading false stories that might make people scared. By midnight, 4 teenagers had been arrested in connection with this incident. The story was they had somehow perpetrated a hoax that involved blowing up a store. Now, folks outside the mall who had no idea anything weird had just taken place reported seeing strange ring shaped clouds moving in what looked like a formation in the area right around the mall. This was accompanied by rumbling sounds, even though the sky was clear and there was no sign of rain. Power was lost in the neighborhoods around the mall. At first, it was everywhere all at once. Then, it was one neighborhood at a time. The lights would come on and then go back out as the lights came on just a few blocks away. This went on all night. The airport had begun rerouting all incoming flights to surrounding fields, and no airplanes were allowed to take off until the next morning. The power company said there was no real power outage and that the folks had just experienced a minor blackout. The investigation on what happened inside the mall got a little weird. The store was completely destroyed as if a bomb had gone off, but there was no evidence of any kind of explosive device. There had been 2 people working in the store who were now missing. There was no sign of any human remains. The woman folks thought had been grabbed by the shadow was nowhere to be found, along with two others who were still missing. A total of 5 people had vanished without a trace. The authorities assured everyone the investigation was going to go on, followed by a hasty explanation saying there was some kind of an unknown explosion, which was followed by there was nothing to see here and it was time to move on. Within a month, other more exciting things had happened, other crimes that needed investigating, and the incident at the mall just kind of fizzled and went away. As for those 4 kids who were arrested, nobody was ever charged for public disturbance, and their files all just kind of disappeared. Within about a year, many of the witnesses died from unexplained illnesses or accidents. I could only find one version of this story. Could it be just a story to entertain folks? Or did this really happen and the folks in charge don't want us to know about it? It reminds me so much of the mall in Florida where the aliens showed up. That went away real quick, didn't it? An incident at the Miami Mall which resulted in the arrest of 4 teenagers. Does that sound familiar? Seems to be a pattern here. 4 teenagers were arrested for causing a widespread fight involving shooting off fireworks and running amok. New Year's Day 2024, more than 60 police cars swarmed the Bayside Marketplace in downtown Miami to quell a fight involving a group of about 250 teenagers who were fighting with each other in an open-air shopping mall. The people who had witnessed the fight said otherwise. They said that huge black alien figures had arrived in the shopping mall and began moving about, causing the shoppers there to make a hasty retreat. You could hear King Arthur yelling, "Run away! Run away!" Okay, not really, but if you don't understand that reference, go back and watch The Holy Grail, Monty Python's finest hour and a half. As the mall was being surrounded, the airport was told to shut down or divert all incoming or outgoing flights. Does that sound familiar? People had some videos showing huge shadowy figures moving about the mall. These were described as being 10-foot tall aliens. Aliens from outer space, not from other countries. As these videos were being released on social media platforms, the authorities quickly tried to debunk the whole thing. The police came out saying there had been several dozen teenagers arrested for fighting, shooting fireworks at people, and disturbing the peace. Later on, the story was 4 teenagers were arrested in connection with the incident. The images of the 10-foot tall aliens was explained away as being a group of uniformed officers moving past the building, and their shadows looked like aliens. Just 5 months earlier, a similar incident had taken place in California. The first report said that there were thousands of teenagers involved, followed by it being a few dozen, and by the end of the day, 5 teenagers were arrested. Is this a pattern, or are these folks simply copying each other's stories and adding to it a bit, or just changing the names and the locations to try to get in on the excitement? Back in the 1970s, there was a ranch house on north of Hillside neighborhood next to the Interstate 35. The ranch house was still there, showing signs of having lasted for some time, maybe since the 1800s. Horses would graze on the lawns in front of the homes that were being built in the neighborhood. The field where the ranch house sat was saved for commercial development. One day, the ranch house was torn down and a Sears store went up along with a shopping mall, now known as Mall del Norte, Mall of the North for y'all up north. James was a new security officer working at Mall del Norte. No relation, that's his first name. He had to enter one of the empty stores in order to turn off the lights. The breaker box was on the back wall, and this was the only way to turn the lights on or off. As James was walking through the store, he noticed the bathroom doors were all open. He looked inside each room just to be sure there was nobody hiding in there, waiting for him to leave. Both rooms were empty, so he flipped the lights off and started for the main door. As he was moving through the dark store using his flashlight, he heard the sound of a door slamming shut. Both bathroom doors were closed. There was no one in there to move the doors. He had checked. Being new on the job and not wanting to miss anything, James went back and checked each bathroom again. Still nobody there. He quickly moved through the dark, heading to the exit. He checked all the corners for intruders, but he was very much alone. Kiri, I hope that's how you pronounce your name, Khiry, worked at Mal del Norte for a few years. He has had a few odd encounters in his time there as well. The first place he worked was at the Macy's store as a support personnel. His job was to fetch anything needed to stock the shelves and move anything too heavy for the sales clerks. The store has 3 floors, but only 2 are open to the public. The middle or second floor is only for storage. The ceiling is very low, giving it a very claustrophobic feel. In November, as it was raining outside, Kiri was sent to the storage floor to pick up some boxes of perfume. The room he needed was called the fragrance room, which at one time had been a bathroom. The wall was still covered with mirrors, but in place of stalls, there were shelves from floor to ceiling. He didn't say if they took out the toilets or not. That would have been kind of convenient, but have your own private bathroom that nobody else used? Ha. He pulled his cart to the door and then went to find the boxes he needed. As he was bending down to check the labels, a box fell from one of the shelves. It hit the floor with a bang, but none of the bottles broke. Kiri picked the box up and put it back where it had fallen from. He moved to another shelf only to hear the same box hit the floor once again. As he stood there looking at the box, wondering what might be going on, he felt a hand on his shoulder. Thinking this might be the manager had a tendency to do this sort of thing, Kiri turned to ask what was up. There was nobody there. He quickly moved to the door to see if somebody had slipped out, and he saw a leg disappearing around the door jamb. Kiri moved to the hallway just in time to see the same leg vanishing around the corner at the end of the hall. This hallway was a dead end. There was nobody there, and there was no place for them to hide. Shaking off this weird encounter, he made his way back down to the main floor. There, he ran into one of the women who asked what was up. Apparently, he had kind of an odd look on his face. Kiri told her what had just happened, and she said, "That's why your position is always vacant." Kiri moved from a support position to a security guard position, security officer. Late one night, one of the employees at one of the stores came back inside saying that she had forgotten her cell phone in the store. He went in with her to help look. Inside the store, they both saw a man wearing a blue striped polo shirt moving around the displays. Kiri went into security guard mode and he went to see who this was and what he was doing. He searched the entire store. He looked in any place a person could hide, but he found nothing. Had the sales clerk not seen the man too, this might have been just his imagination. Two people do not imagine the same thing at the same time. James worked the 6 p to 2 a shift each night. Kiri worked the 12 midnight to 8 a.m. shift. During their 2 hour overlap, they worked together. A call came from the police department saying there was a motion alarm set off at the Luby's cafeteria. While James went to have a look through the windows, Kiri went to the office to check their security cameras. James got to the front door of the cafeteria and he looked in just as somebody ran around the corner from the front corridor and into the serving line to the right. James called Kiri and asked if he could see the suspect at the far end of the public area. The man he had seen was wearing a blue striped polo shirt. Kiri checked the closed circuit cameras but didn't see anyone inside the restaurant. There was silverware scattered all about the floor as if some disgruntled employee had had a fit. The cash register cover was on the floor as well. James called the police and told them he had seen somebody inside but lost sight of the intruder. He also called the manager of the cafeteria. This was standard policy. James checked the entrance and the exit to be sure they were both locked. They were. He stepped outside through entrance number 3 and he looked in through the outside windows near the entrance to the mall. The police showed up. 6 officers came to search for the man inside the restaurant. The manager came along as well to be sure everything was okay. No one was found inside the cafeteria, and there was no sign of anyone having broken in. The silverware on the floor couldn't be explained. It wasn't there when the manager had left, and he was the last one out the door. Kiri liked to work evenings. It was quiet, and there were no shoppers running around. He was beginning his shift, and he stopped to chat with one of the folks that cleaned up. They stood right outside one of the stores being remodeled for a new client. When Even though it was after hours, the lights were left on and the door was open slightly so that workers could come and go as they needed. As the two were standing there by the door, they heard a loud bang come from inside the store. He returned to the door just as a shadowy form of someone's feet moved across the bottom of the door. You know, the little gap you can see through, followed by the door moving a bit. He opened the door to see who was in there, but the store was empty. He walked in to make sure there was nobody hiding in one of the dressing rooms. The store felt extremely hot. It felt as if somebody had turned the heat on. Akiri searched the whole store, but he found no one there. Whatever had caused the shadow to pass under the door and then move the door could not be found. After store hours, a man hauls a pressure washer around each of the entrances to the mall to clean the sidewalks. Get rid of all that nasty chewing gum that people insist on throwing on the ground. Kiri was walking his rounds and he felt the need for a drink, a bit of refreshments. He walked his rounds and found the drink machine outside entrance number 3, where the Luby's cafeteria sits, the one with the strange happenings. He stepped outside and he bought his drink, and then he started talking to the man with the machine. That was when he saw what looked like somebody standing inside the Luby's next to one of the windows. The blinds were halfway down, but the lower half of a person was there. He re-asked, "Do you see that guy?" The man cleaning looked over at the security officer. He then looked at the window and said, "I see people in there all the time, only there's nobody there." He went back to washing the sidewalks. Akiri looked closer, but on his second try couldn't see anyone. Stepping inside, he carefully looked through the doors and the gate, but could see no evidence of a break-in. All the doors were locked, and the cafeteria was empty. We live close to Mall del Norte, as in a few blocks. It is sometimes easier to walk there than to drive due to parking. Over the years, I've heard stories about the ghosts seen by the cleaning staff. The folks cleaning Mall del Norte late at night have reported seeing a little girl hanging around near the Sears store at the south end of the building. She has been seen walking around the concourse in front of the store and sometimes sitting on the bench areas. There's now a mega furniture store where the Sears used to be. The girl looks to be about 5 to 7 years old. She's usually wearing a fancy looking dress that looks more like something to go to church in rather than shopping. It looks like a dress straight out of the 1800s. Correction, early 1900s. Sometimes she has been seen holding a doll clutched to her chest. Other times she's not holding anything. The reports are around 10 at night when all the shoppers have gone home. People have reported hearing her crying as if she's lost, looking for her mother. Anytime any of the people that see her to try to talk to her, she vanishes. On occasion, they will hear her but not see her. The Laredo Paranormal Research Society had arranged to spend the late evening looking into the story, but things got screwed up and due to scheduling and liability and such, and the investigation never took place. That was too bad, but too many people involved, too many officials involved, and some of them didn't trust the LPRS not to try to steal anything from the shopping mall, even though about half of the LPRS members are in law enforcement. I did stop on occasion and try looking through some of the doors right around 10:30 at night whenever I was out for a run. I would run past the front of the Sears store and then I'd stop and I'd look in each window, but I never got to see the little girl. It's not like she's on a clock or anything. She shows up when she wants to and sometimes where she wants to. It's not really a residual haunting because the ch- the images change all the time. The description of the little girl is very close to the same one that is seen at Fort McIntosh. The ghost at Fort McIntosh hasn't been seen holding a doll, but the rest is the same. Same dress, same hair, same physical description. Mall del Norte to Fort McIntosh is about 3 miles in a straight line, although it takes you about a half hour to drive there because of traffic. Could or would a ghost travel that far? We don't know. Anybody that claims they know everything there is to know about ghosts is full of themselves. Until we actually have a ghost come forward and sit down for an interview, we won't know. And then we'll have to wonder whether or not the ghost is telling us the truth or not. Ghosts do not follow the same rules that we do. At the mall, there's a meter box located just outside. The door has been seen to open and close on its own. Inside, somebody has written with a felt tip pen, "Have you seen her?" Anyone reading this message immediately thinks of the ghost of the little girl. In 2018, at about 9:15 p.m., the motion alarms went off inside the Dillard store. The alarm was reported at the Laredo Police Department, and they contacted mall security to have a look around as the police responded. Officer Jared and several other security officers went to the main entrance and looked through the gate. An off duty sheriff's deputy who worked at the mall was sent around to the outside to check the doors. Jared told his partner to stay at the gate while he went to check one of the side exits. The police arrived and they used a canine to search for anybody inside the building. They found no sign of anyone being in the store or anyone trying to break in. Jared went back to the gate where the other security officer was still on guard. The man was as white as a sheet. The officer said he had just seen a little girl about 6 to 8 years old. She had a long white gown that looked as if it was from a long time ago. She was there, and then she simply vanished in the blink of an eye. Further north from the Sears is the Macy's store. People have reported seeing a balloon drifting along as if it's held by an unseen hand. It is possible, it is visible for a few seconds before it vanishes from sight. It doesn't pop, it just fades away. Jared saw a pink balloon in front of the Macy's store. It was moving along about 5 feet up off the floor, about the height if a little child were holding the string, say a 6 or 8 year old girl. The balloon went along for about 20 yards and then it settled to the floor. It then looked as if it had been discarded by the owner. Helium does leak out, but it does not do so in a few seconds. It takes days before a balloon will no longer float, but still maintain its shape. Jared looked at the balloon, now sitting on the floor. The former owner no longer had an interest in it. It could be considered a hazard should somebody step on it and slip, and so he punctured the balloon and threw it in the trash. 2 years later, Officer James was working the same shift when he received a call from the sergeant. The sergeant asked James to meet him in front of the movie theaters. There was a blue balloon that seemed to be following the sergeant. As he walked towards the Dillard store, the blue balloon was right behind him. If he turned and went the other way, the balloon was right there as well. The sergeant made a joke saying, "It's the ghost of the little girl." Once the two officers were standing in front of the Dillards once again, James said, "It's time for us to go. I guess you can stay if you want." They signed out for the shift and left. Could a ghost girl hold a balloon? Toy balloons were invented in 1824 by Michael Faraday. The folks working at Dillard's have given the little girl a name. They call her Ashley. Ashley tends to mess with things when no one is around. Before going home for the night, the clerks would set up displays on tables throughout the store. Once everything was ready for the next day, they would head home. In the morning, when they opened the store for business, the displays would all be on the floor. Things would be scattered about as if some small child had a fit during the night. They would have to quickly set everything back up for the day's sales. Ashley is blamed for anything unexplained that happens around the store. Eddie works on anything that needs maintenance in the store. If it's anything major that would require a lot of large area and taking something apart, they'll wait till nighttime to work on it. One night they had to work on the escalators. Eddie would have to run upstairs to check on something. The elevator would be upstairs and he would have to wait for it to come down. Once he was finished upstairs, he would have to wait for the elevator to come back up. If he was upstairs, it was downstairs. If he was downstairs, it was upstairs. The elevator would go up and down on its own. After putting up with this most of the night, they decided that Ashley was messing with the elevator. Ghosts, for some odd reason, really like elevators. During the day, Eddie would hear boxes being thrown around in the linen department. He finally said, "If you're not going to help, stop making a mess." He hoped Ashley would stop. Aaron was driving home at 1:30 a.m. He decided to take a shortcut through the mall parking lot. As he was approaching the Macy's store, he saw a very young girl walking around. She had on a white dress that kind of looked out of place. He wondered what she was doing out at such an hour and why was she all dressed up. As Aaron went by, he looked over to where she had been, but the girl was no longer there. The parking lot was empty and there was no place to hide. Late at night, the security officers walk around the empty shopping mall, checking the doors and the gates to the stores. As they walk past store windows, they sometimes see shadows moving about. The mannequins tend to get on their nerves as well. They look so human. One of the stores over near Sears has a set of stairs that go up to the storeroom. As the officers are walking by the stairs, they hear what sounds like a small child crying. They report feeling an oppressive weight come over them when they're in the area of that building. Those who check never find anything in the stairs that could be making the sound. Early one morning, before the mall opened for the day's shoppers, security officers saw a man, all in black, walking along the concourse. It looked almost like a shadow. The man in black turned and he entered one of the stores that was still closed. People do walk around the mall early in the morning, but this guy looked suspicious, and the doors going into the malls are usually locked at this hour, so an officer was sent to see who was and what he was doing. The sales staff were inside the store getting ready for the day, and when the officer knocked on the door, they let him in. He asked if any of the sales staff had just walked through the concourse and entered the store. The sales staff all said nobody had walked in for the past 30 minutes. The officer described the man he had seen, and the sales staff all turned to one of their people who was standing in the back. This person said, "See, I told you there was a shadow being walking around here." The clerk had talked about seeing a shadow being inside the store, knocking shoes and things off of the shelves. Even though others had seen a shadow, they wrote it off as being just a trick of the light. The shoes fell because they were set on the shelves wrong. No one had believed it when the salesman had told them what was going on. After this day, they began to believe him. All around the mall are vehicles on display. Brand new cars and trucks that you can purchase at one of the many car dealerships in Laredo. The cars are driven into the building through a large glass door that is opened only to bring big things into the mall. Once they are parked where the vehicle will remain for a few weeks, the keys are all taken to the security office. There, they are placed in a plastic bag that is sealed. The bag is then placed in the security key box, which is mounted on the wall. The key box is always locked for the safety of the building's keys and the vehicles. James was in the office taking care of paperwork. Paperwork is a part of the job that has to be done no matter what. Reports have to be filed, questions answered for future perusal. As he sat at the desk writing, James heard the sound of keys falling to the floor. He turned to look, and there on the floor, under the key box, lay all the vehicle keys from the vehicles on display. There was no way these keys could have fallen from the box. The door was locked. Inside the box is a partition that swings out of the way. The partition is slightly bent, so you have to lift up on it in order to move it. The keys to the vehicles are all behind this partition, and the little box has a lip on it as well. The plastic bag was still inside the box, and it was still sealed, but now empty. James quickly grabbed the keys off the floor. He shoved them into the plastic bag, put it back in the box, closed the partition, locked the door, and then he went out for a walk to try to get this off his mind. We have two malls here in Laredo. Mall del Norte, where the little girl is seen, and the River Drive Mall, where people didn't want to talk to me for some reason. But that's another story. Back when I worked for a living, the River Drive Mall was not the place to go. It was run down. There were more empty stores than stores that were open. The place was gloomy, even on a good day, and it had a little bit of a damp, mildewy smell to it. Before the outlets were opened, there had been a mall near the Rio Grande. It was built into the side of a hill, so half of the building was actually underground. You could drive from Water Street onto the roof of the building where the parking lot was, and then you took an escalator down to the stores. The escalator opened into a kind of a tunnel with stores on either side. Miguel had taken a job working as a security guard at the River Drive Mall. Once all the stores had closed for the night, Miguel would walk the corridors, checking to be sure everybody was out of the buildings. He just about always started at the west end and worked his way east. One evening, just to shake things up a bit, Miguel decided to start at the east end and work his way west. He would check the doors to the stores to be sure they were locked and turn off any lights. As he was approaching that tunnel, Miguel saw a woman standing by the escalator. She was wearing a brown top and blue jeans. Miguel figured she was a shopper that accidentally got locked in. He approached her to tell her he would unlock the door so she could get out. She vanished before he could get a word out. Later on, Miguel was told there had been some kind of an accident right where he'd seen that woman. A shopper had been killed when part of the equipment up in the ceiling fell, hitting her in the head. From that day on, Miguel always started his patrols from the West End. The Cherry Vale Mall in Rockford, Illinois, is said to be haunted. I've been to Rockford, but never to that mall. The first store opened there was the Sears store, kind of like how it is in Laredo. I'm starting to wonder, are Sears stores, or were Sears stores, attracting all of this weirdness that kept going on? The mall had 22 stores on the first day, and the theaters were built separate from the main building. The mall was updated over its 50 years of existence. Like many malls, they kept adding stores as they went. Outer stores also came along, ringing the parking lot on several sides. Listverse and Mental Floss say that Cherryvale is one of the top 10 haunted malls, which I find kind of funny since they didn't bother to include the Laredo Mall del Norte. Maybe they go by some other way of rating based on I don't know what. Some of the paranormal activity reported takes place in one of the bathrooms. People report using the John and then having some unknown force hold the bathroom door shut. Others report say the staff would leave the mall at the end of each day with their stores clean and organized and return the next day to find things in disarray, clothing scattered or displays knocked over. Folks working there say they have a feeling of being watched or followed after the building closes at night. A poltergeist that messes the place up and holds the bathroom door shut. This isn't what I would call top 10 hauntings, unless there's a lot of things going on there that they didn't bother to list. Star Mall, Alabang, previously known as the Metropolis Star, was built in 1990s at the grounds of a former Alabang cemetery. It was constructed by Manuela Realty Development Corp., a company founded by Donna Manuela Aguilar Rigaria Sr. Over the past few decades, many folks have reported strange experiences inside and outside this structure. There have been sightings of strange figures, mysterious mists, and even accounts of cold hands touching shoppers. A security guard told about watching a group of well dressed people entering the mall almost at closing time. This close to closing, all the exits were locked except this one. Anyone still inside needed to take the same door back out. As the last minute ticked by, the group never came out. A search of the building didn't lead to their being found. None of the other guards had seen these folks exit the building. This mall has a pool, and many of the locals go there to frolic. Is that the right word? John Panett said that he liked to frolic in the pool, so I'm going to go with that. These folks went there to frolic in the pool, but first they went to the changing room to, well, change. And then it was out to the wet stuff. Right from the start, it felt strange in the room. The lights seemed a bit dim, and the sound was off as if they all had cotton in their ears, like the pressure you get when ascending in a plane. They were there to swim, so they ignored these oddities and soldiered on. As they swam about, it felt as if they were growing heavy and uncomfortable. Odd feelings, but I can understand. You don't want to be feeling heavy in the pool. It might make you sink. When it was time to leave, they changed into their street clothes and headed out. Just outside the front door were hundreds of black birds and a strange looking woman dressed all in black as well, with super long black hair. That night, several of them felt weird, and the next morning they decided they needed to be cleansed. A spiritual cleansing, not a bath. The person doing their cleansing said they had encountered many spirits while in the water, and some of these had become attached. There's another peculiar phenomenon at the mall involving a shoplifting ghost that steals items from the store shelves. People have seen an item on a shelf that seems to vanish as soon as they look away. Visitors have also reported hearing strange noises and seeing objects move on their own with no explanations. On the seventh floor of Plaza Singapura, there used to be a gynecological and pediatrics clinic, kind of like what we find at Planned Parenthood. Abortions used to take place there. Once the baby killing factory was gone, the owners of the building put in a theater in its place. Well, what would you call it? The theater goers began reporting seeing and hearing strange things. Not my show, but strange things anyway. Folks would see a little girl sitting somewhere near the front row in theaters number 7 and 10 during the first and the last showing, where there were fewer people. The girl would appear and disappear without ever entering or exiting. This happened so often that movie goers began taking gifts, toys and stuffed animals, and leaving them in the front rows. The staff began placing things against the doors at night to see if anybody was sneaking in. In the morning, these items would be hidden away in some dark corner. In an effort to get the little girl to go on to the next level, priests were brought in to bless the theater, but she still showed up on occasion. Projectionists working alone at night said that they would see shadows in the cinema after all the patrons had left. The old Plaza Singapura at Dhabi Ghat was an iconic place. It's situated right beside the Istana. The Astana is the official residence of the office of the President of Singapore. Folks who worked there had many weird experiences. The people working at the Johan, one of their stores, one of the fancier stores, said the place had a basement where they could take a break during their shift. Late at night, they would hear the sound of someone crying, like a small child. A search would reveal no one, and the sound would move around as they were looking. They also saw white misty shapes flying around up near the ceiling. Some of the staff thought this might be a Pontianak. A Pontianak is a female vampire ghost in the Southeast Asian folklore. The mall was protected by many sacred symbols and blessings, so there shouldn't be any kind of an evil spirit getting in. Other people working there would see ghosts of young kids walking about. Anyone trying to approach would see these spirits simply vanish. At night, when the mall was closed, they would hear and sometimes see children playing hide and seek. The security officers often left candy and toys around the mall. School kids, older kids, would play a Spirit of the Pen or coin at the Plaza Singapura because the spirits responded much more quickly there. Similar to a Ouija board, the Spirit of the Coin game uses a talking board to contact spirits and communicate with them. You need a coin, a piece of paper, and a pen. It's basically a hand-drawn Ouija board. On one occasion, two secondary school girls became possessed and were taken to the Fire Command Center. That's kind of like the security office. At first, their friends thought they were just playing a prank, but when the prank wouldn't stop, they got worried and they called for help. None of these kids wanted to get anywhere close to these two girls. From the Fire Command Center, these two girls were taken out back to the loading bay area. They had female staff show up and help out since a bunch of men manhandling a couple of schoolgirls it just wasn't right. They took ash from an altar and rubbed it over the girls' faces, and they made offerings to the deities for help. Nobody really knew what to do, so they were just praying and kind of winging it as they went. Hey, I saw this on TV the other day. Let's try it. Bad idea. One of the girls did stop struggling and became unconscious. The other one was still screaming and flinging her arms and feet about as if something were trying to attack her. The unconscious girl opened her eyes and started laughing. This behavior changed drastically, and it looked like a different entity had gone into her. The one was much stronger. This one was much stronger. The two ladies holding her down were thrown off of her, and three men had to jump in to prevent the schoolgirl from attacking anyone. There was a lot of struggling and screaming and maniacal laughter. Then the violent girl leaped onto the one that was unconscious, pinning her down. The violent girl had her face right above the other girl and seemed to be sucking the life force out of her. The girl, who was on the ground, exhaled a very long breath, and then they both collapsed. When they came to, the paramedics had already arrived. They were treated for scrapes and bruises, but they both refused to go to the hospital. Management came and everyone was dispersed. Later that week, everyone involved was given a memo stating not to mention the incident to anyone, as there was an ongoing police investigation. The investigation either never took place or the results were kept secret. This was not the first time a simple game turned into a huge problem. There were many possession cases, but they were written off as some kind of a fit. The mall later underwent a massive makeover, and the official story is whatever was causing the problem was banished. Now, I've seen a few places that have signs up that say the use of Ouija boards is prohibited in this area. I wonder if there's some kind of a connection there. The Silverburn is an out of town shopping center located on Barhead Road in Pollock, Glasgow, Scotland. There is an apparition of a woman dressed all in black period clothing, and she has been spotted 4 times in just 1 month. Now, the mall is relatively new. I think it's only about 8 years old. So this has led to people theorizing what this apparition might be. One shopper said, and no, I am not going to try to do a Scottish accent. We were waiting on our friend coming out of one of the shops when out of the corner of my eye I saw this dark figure coming down the corridor. It was almost hovering. It was terrifying to see. A Silverburn security guard encountered this spirit and he said, I'm still not going to try that accent. I had just finished my shift and was leaving the center bathroom when I had this sudden chill. I didn't think much of it, but as I looked up, I saw this shadowy figure disappear down the hall. There is no way that it was human. Shopping center staff called in the Glasgow Paranormal Investigations to have a look. The Silverburn spokesman said, we are aware that a shadow woman has been spotted around the center, and we are taking these sightings extremely seriously. We have reached out to local experts in the field of paranormal activity who will hopefully be able to shed some light on the matter. A member of the GPI said, it is not uncommon for a spirit to be attached to a site before the present building was constructed. Possibly Silverburn or the construction of the new cinema disturbed something. This can be common in hauntings. The most important thing is to ensure that whoever or whatever this thing is finds a peaceful resting place. Kind of like how the arena here in Laredo has a woman seen up on the second tier going into the ladies' room late at night. Hope you enjoyed tonight's show. If you did, spread it around. Tell other people they should be listening to Strange Things with Chris James. If you are listening on one of the many platforms out there and you figure you'd like to hear more of my stories, You can find all of the archives at iHeartRadio in the podcast section. And if any of you out there happen to have one of the old Art Bell coffee cups, like the one I broke and the other one that my cat broke, I broke 2 Art Bell coffee cups in the span of a month. If you happen to have one, they were blackish, barrel-shaped coffee cups with a white interior so you knew when it was time to wash it, which I never did. If you have one, I would be interested in maybe buying it off of you. It was back the first time Art Bell retired and what's his name? Siegel took over for a while. The guy that had a cat named Vanna White, the cat. Anyway, if you have a cup and you just don't want it anymore, or you know somebody that does, let me know. You can contact me at strangethings@arkanasa.com or leave a comment in the section below the videos. Till next Saturday, this is Chris James for Strange Things.
Are you coming to the tree where there's strung up a man who they say he murdered 3? Strange things have happened there. No stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree.